Hey guys, what's going on?
What up?
Live out here.
Sick. For anyone watching online, my name is Oscar de Lima. We're here for the Refuge Mixdown. We're sitting down with Brillstein. Brill, you want to say what up to the crew?
What up to the crew from Los Angeles, California?
Yes, sick. And we invited along Demuir, my homie. D, do you want to do your quick one?
What's going on? Demuir here, purveyor of all sounds underground, coming from Toronto.
Yes, sick.
I like how me and D have the acoustic treatments, and you got like the palm tree.
Yeah, dude. Because I don't make beats. I'm artist liaison.
Do you not? Do you not make music?
Never made music ever.
That's why you're good at putting out music. That's why you're on top of your shit, I think.
So I just don't like to blend the two worlds, man. I let the talented guys do it.
If I had to answer people's emails and listen to their problems, I would go nuts.
Yeah, I do. I fully
or convince them to send something they promised to send.
Oh,
Yeah, right?
That's the other part of my job.
I got a hard enough time dealing with myself. How long did it take me to get you these demos? Like a year and a half?
Oh, fully a year and a half. Every week, where's these tunes at? So when are you sending me these tunes?
Came out good though, man. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, they came out sick. So, look, the Refuge Mixdown is a new series we're doing. Just collab with artists, get to know the face behind the name, and do something a little bit different and get some perspective. I'm going to flick it over to D to kind of kick off some questions, get to know Brillstein, and look, it's going to be quite conversational, so we'll just go from there.
Yeah.
D?
No, it's all good. When I got the questions, I actually, the first one that popped to mind and it aligned nicely was, I was like, where did we meet, Mike? And I'm pretty sure the first time I met you was at ADE in Amsterdam, Jesse Rose's party after that thing got canceled or something like that. Am I right?
It was earlier that day. I'll never forget the first time we met. I think I met both of you. Oh no, I met Oscar. I met you back at Do Over, like way back at WMC.
Yeah, I think it might.
I met you. I remember we were at a pub. It was Oliver Dollar and I and Louis Osborne.
That's right. Yeah.
We were walking out of the pub, and it was my first time at ADE. We were fresh off the train, and we went in and we had a beer. I don't really drink, so one metric pint of beer, and I'm like.
You're done. You're floating.
Like someone that's never smoked weed before. I'm like, where are we? What's going on? Let's party. And like, I walked out. Like I remember walking past like Harry Romero at the bar, and it was just one of those weird, like almost famous moments where you're like, oh my God, there's just like there's Harry Romero and there's Roger Sanchez. And then we walked out onto the street, and you guys were taking a group picture, and it was Oscar. There was you, Demuir, Sneak, Todd Terry,
right?
I want to say Mo, it was like 10 people. I forget who's in that picture, but it's like a cavalcade of stars. And I think we didn't know who each other were.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, we took a picture, and it's like, well, who am I tagging? Like, what's going on? Like, I was like, I know who DJ Sneak and Todd Terry and like, Little Lewis or like whoever these guys are, but I was like, who are you and who are you? And you're like, well, I'm Demuir. And I was like, oh shit, Demuir, what's up? Like, I'm Brillstein. And you're like, Brillstein. And then it was just, and then I feel like we just were kind of crewed up for like the rest of that week.
Yeah,
we had a little brunch because the party got canceled. I remember we were both bummed out by the industry tech house hotel lobby vibes.
Oh yeah.
Sitting around talking mad shit. I remember we were cracking jokes.
Yeah,
that was a good trip, man. I was glad I went out there that year for sure.
That ADE was dope. It was a good time.
It was a vibe, man. It was definitely like it was good to put the face to a lot of names, and like I kind of already, Brillstein is a pseudonym, or it's my real last name, but I was the Mike B as a DJ for many, many years. So when I did Brillstein, I didn't necessarily like do the whole tour and go like reintroduce myself to everyone. It was kind of like I knew who I knew. So I thought that ADE was really important to meet guys like you and like be like anyone who had been around in like the last 4 or 5 years that I hadn't gotten to get in touch with. Because I think I've been tweeting at you for like 8 years.
8 years.
Just
I don't know.
Yeah,
I haven't been around that long, but
since when did your House Gangster record come out?
The first one probably would have been like 2015, I think.
Yeah, so right around then. That would have been.
Yeah.
I heard of you through Sneak, and I was just like, "Fuck, this guy gets it." It was just a thing where like every record you did like really spoke to me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
This new, I feel like you're up in the BPMs. I like that you're like. I feel like you just breached 130.
Yeah, I've been touching it lately, like 130, 135.
I like it, dude. The energy's good. I've been playing a lot of it.
You gotta get up there.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I was actually telling Oscar in the pre-interview.
The outtakes.
The last time I saw you was you were DJing in Alhambra, which was crazy because I live here in Los Angeles, and I had never been to that place and did not know that like shit could get that lit on a Tuesday night, outside of Los Angeles.
Yeah, that was a fun gig, man. It was like Tuesday night. Like, who's gonna come out on a Tuesday? But no, it's LA.
It was like a couple of eons on the dance floor, like kind of like a cheesy little bar. It looked like a bar from like Melrose Place or something. Like, it was like from the 90s.
I thought Tubbs and Crockett were gonna come in from Miami, man.
It really looked like a bar from like a movie where they would be like, "This is where the bad guys hang out." Like, it was just like a lot of LEDs, and my friend and I drove out. I was like, "Yo, this guy, he's amazing. It's Tuesday night at midnight. It's gonna take us 20 minutes to get there. It would usually take 2 hours in traffic. Let's go check it out." We walked in and it was cracking. I have video from that night somewhere.
Yeah, that night was insane. It's probably one of the first gigs where somebody took a glass and made a tip bowl. It was so funny. Like, you play so songs and then it would just get filled up with like ones. It was crazy.
Every little bit counts, right? At the time, you're like, whatever. And then now it's quarantine and you're like, damn, I could use those $17.
You know, here we go, you know. I'm like, damn, it's Tuesday night. Like, how's this happening? But it was, but like there was like housey motherfuckers in there, like the old school LA, like chunky Latinos in hoodies on the floor, hands in the air. Like, it was a vibe. Yeah, like
that was really cool. But I think that's why I love Los Angeles so much. I've lived here most of my life, and there's still things like that I'm like, this goes on. I to this day have no idea who threw that party, like what that was about, like how you ended up there.
Oh yeah, you know, LA's got an incredible scene. The thing I love about LA, it told me, it was one of the first examples where I saw groups of promoters working together towards something.
Well, there's really a crew out here. Well, like when Rhonda brought you out, you know, after we had met, I was in a rush to get you out here because I'm just such a fan. And then I had actually put the Rhonda guys onto you, and then they brought you out, and it was a thing where everyone is so tight knit, like most of the people that work together, that they were like, "Hey man, like, we're booking Demuir, like, is that okay?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, book Demuir, dude. Like, what are you talking about?" Like,
that is so, but LA is so dope that way, man. Like, people working together towards a common goal to support the music, you know.
On the flip side of it, there is the thing where it's so big that, and there are so many people working together, that if there's not someone in your like orbit of 20 or 30 people that you know that are doing parties, you get stuff like that party in Alhambra where you're just like, I've spent my whole life making sure I know what's going on, and it took like my bro from Toronto coming out to DJ to I didn't even know there was a club out there. So like,
to tell you otherwise.
It's just so big that you can have little secret pockets of like, people have their own scenes. Like, I've walked into empty rooms and been like, "Who's DJing?" Like, "Oh, it's Roman Flugel." I'm just like, what? There's just weird stuff going on all the time out here. I'm a fan. I love it. I grew up here. I left, but I came back.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man. No, I enjoyed I got introduced to your music with Ollie Dolly on on Jesse's label, so that's how I knew, you know, your music and stuff. So it's been really cool.
Well, Jesse, for all intents and purposes, created the Brillstein persona.
Right.
Of course he did.
I know. It sounds like he concocted it up in
If I don't say that, I get in really big trouble.
We'll make sure to tag him.
If I don't, it says in my contract that I have to give props to Jesse Rose anytime Brillstein is mentioned. But no, but that's real. I've always been I wouldn't say an open format DJ, but like a multi-genre DJ.
Yeah.
I've always loved music. I've never believed that there's such thing as a good genre, just good songs.
Yeah.
I know you guys feel the same way. I mean, I listen to your podcast all the time, and I know you always end on like a non-house record and you vibe out. And like, there's so much out there. And plus we're digging for loops, and we all love hip hop, and we all love, but I was having a hard time applying that kind of stuff to my DJing. Cause I mean, my favorites are like Sneak and Doc and Mark Farina, Derek Carter when it comes to house. And then hip hop, I love like Stretch Armstrong, who was my kind of like DJ father, and then like Funk Flex, and just anyone who like does it to death and they live and they breathe it.
Yeah,
and
right.
I've my whole life have attempted to do that with everything that I'm into, which is really difficult and results in like a house full of crap. It's got like t-shirts and
yeah,
you know,
well, that's part of the culture,
records,
right?
and dolls and puppets and this and that. But when we started, Jesse moved out to LA and saw me DJ a couple times, and we just started talking. Like he just was like, he's like, I've never really seen anyone play like so much different bullshit in one set and like make it work. And I was like, that's actually, I'll take that as a compliment, because I knew what he meant. It was just the thing where like I kept the same crowd, but I was playing like, I think I played like a Switch record and then a Block Party record and then a rap record, and then it was 2011, like anything goes.
Yeah.
So so there was a lot of that, and he was just like, he's like, I bet you got a lot of loops. Have you ever produced a record? And I've done little collabs and things here and there. I had a project called 15th on Fool's Gold. There was like a French Touch thing, and then like a couple other little side projects. But it was always me and someone else making things that were a little bit more cut and paste, I guess, or like just, I always needed someone else to kind of handle the engineering end of it. And Jesse said, Jesse Rose taught me how to break the rules of music, which, for better or worse, like I got over there and he was like, what's your favorite song, your favorite disco record ever that you would never ever sample for anything? And I broke out this Cameo record and I played it for him, and I was like, I play this at like every time I play, like in the daytime, this is my shit. I would never loop this up. He was like, cool, put it in the computer, chop it up, loop it up. I was like,
I saw that coming.
I was like, no, I just told you, like, I don't want to do that. And he's like, let's do it. And then he goes, we need a vocal. He goes, I need you to go inside the vocal booth. He goes, I want you to say, like in kind of a Miss Kittney, like, just like Demuir, no pun intended, manner. He's like, I want you to go inside and do the vocal, the lyrics from Inner City Good Life. And I was just like, that's a sin. Like, that's you want to do a cover of Inner City and you want to do it over a record that I swore on my life I would never sample? And then we did it, and it hit, and everyone started playing it. And we did another record too, and then like Loco Dice was playing it, and wow. Like Groove Armada was charting it, and just all these things started happening. And I really didn't know how to produce a record, honestly. And then I started just chopping up samples at home and doing stuff. And I brought him and Oliver, it was in the beginning days of Play It Down. I want to say they had less than 20 or so releases. And they were like hot on the wave of Doing Your Thing. Like Doing Your Thing was obviously like the record of the decade. You know what I mean? Like that came out in 2011, and that sat at number 1 for like 3 months or something. And so Play It Down was like the spot, you know, and they had a couple great follow-ups. And I brought them all my demos, and they were like, yeah, these mixes are garbage, but like the vibe is there. And then we sent it all off to Jan Driver, and then it came back sounding like magic. And then
Jan the King, man. The King.
Jan the King. Shout out to Jan Driver, he had mixed and mastered the stuff I did with Jesse. And so he did that. And then I think somehow through hearing that and watching Jesse, and then Ollie Dollar used to come and stay at my place and kind of help me mix my early stuff. And I just got a sense of it, of just how things should sound on my speakers.
Yeah.
And then I just figured out all kinds of trickery and cheating to where I can now output a song that sounds totally playable.
That's so dope.
Like I hear them and I'm like, I hope this sounds right to other people, and then like next thing I know they're doing well, so that's awesome.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's hard to tell, like, unless other people, like, it's like I make records for people and don't tell them, and then when I see that they're playing it, I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy, like it's dope, you know. Like if I make a record, I'm like, man, Green Velvet would play this shit. And then he charts it. I'm like, yes, okay, I'm not crazy. Like my ears hear what is
mission accomplished.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, how many times I'm sure both of you guys get any number of things that people are like, I'm the shit, here's my music. And then you're like, dude, I don't know what you're hearing. Like this is like hot, you know, and and it's like, it's hard. I mean, I know people who've been DJing for 30 years and still can't beat match. Like it's a,
oh man, that's another combo.
There's a lot of my favorite, and there's a lot of my favorite producers in the world who, like, at a certain point just stopped being awesome too. So it's like I've always been aware of the trajectory of other musicians and like seeing people whose sound I love stop having that sound and just not being aware of what they're hearing. So every time someone actually likes the music, when I send demos to Oscar and he says, these are good, I like them, and then he plays them for his friends and they say they're good, I'm like, that's one more day that I'm not tone deaf and then, and then I'm not wrong.
Well,
and it's a blessing, because I feel like any day now I'm either going to wake up and not want to do it or not be able to do it.
100%. I mean, you're saying it.
Whereas Demuir, I feel like you, sir, are a very disciplined producer. Like you're on it, right? Like how many records do you make in a day? You make 5 records in a day?
We're not here to talk about it is.
Curiosity.
You know,
I mean, I buy like 5 records a week, so you're making like at least 5 a day, right? Like,
oh, you know what? I just have. It's so funny because Harvard Bass did an interview. And I got tagged, and you know, I love Harvard's music, and so I was reading the interview, and he tagged me. Like, I guess he tagged people who influence or inspire him, and I was surprised to read. He's like, man, yeah, like Demuir, I always check him out, his IG stories. That guy must make like 15 songs a day. And like, to me, it's not even that, but yeah, I do have a disciplined workflow.
We're very similar in that we get shit done, but it's like we can't get it done because we have to. Like it'll get done like when it's done, you know, like.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
like Victor's very like Harvard Bass is very prolific, but he's like he works harder than I do, but we're very similar in that it's just kind of like when inspiration hits, we're gonna make the music, versus like a lot of people I know who can just wake up and treat it like a 9 to 5 and like time to make the beats. Like Jesse Rose was very scheduled like that. It was always very impressive to me, but I could never do it.
Like, but I learned that workflow from Sneak. Like, you know, it's funny you're talking about the 9 to 5 because
forget it.
I stopped
that. I would say Sneak is Sneak and I go back to like 2008. We met because he was looking for me because he wanted to punch me. That's a whole other story. But like that's how you meet Sneak, right? Like that's how you get on
that as a friendly ally or enemy.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been very close ever since. And he brought me out to Toronto in like 2009 or so we did a gig together and we did some stuff, and I stayed with he and his wife in I want to say Etobicoke.
That's correct, yeah.
And it was a crazy experience because I'd never, to that point, well, one, I was staying in DJ Sneak's house, which is just like, you know, how did I get here? And then and I was staying in his guest room that was like right above his studio.
Yeah.
And I would just wake up at 9 a.m. to like the vibrations of like the unmistakable like DJ Sneak bass. I was just like, there's a DJ Sneak song I've never heard playing like directly underneath me. And I would run down there and he would just be like, just a breakfast sandwich in each hand and like a blunt in his mouth and making a record, and he had rack mounts and like he was just like, it was crazy. And I stayed there for maybe 4 days, and I heard him finish like a baker's dozen tracks, like, and in that guest room was actually where I produced the first house record I ever made, like in headphones on Ableton. Like I was like, if this guy's gonna make 13 songs while I'm here, I gotta start I gotta make one.
We gotta get one out.
I mean, I know he's been an ally to you as well, Demuir, and I mean that's how I know about you. But I feel like he really is. I wish I could have that dedication to a style of music the way that Sneak does, because like, you can't, like, anyone who comes at him, like, no matter what he says, no matter what he does, if someone wants to come at him, like, nobody keeps it realer than that motherfucker. Like, no one has like dedicated their life to this shit the way he did. And as you know, I mean, there are people who have, you know, like there are the Todd Terrys and the Masters at Works, and he treats them with that respect that he, I think, expects from us, and I think he deserves it. And that was the first thing I said, and he's like, "Yo." Basically what happened was I posted a bunch of his old records on my blog in like 2006 or 7 or something like that. And it hit me up on MySpace. I got a message that was like, yo, Mike B. And I was like, it's finally happening. Like, he found me. We're going to be pals. And it was just like, who the fuck do you think you are? Posting my shit, taking food out of my family's mouth. I'm going to get you. I'm going to find you. Like, it's a rap for you. Like,
Shit.
That's like the introduction.
I was just like, this is not what I meant to have happen. This is not what I wanted at all. And I immediately called Junior Sanchez, a friend of all of ours. I think I have a picture of all of us together somewhere.
Yeah.
Who has been a longtime friend. I know Junior from New York back in like the early 2000s. And he was always my one connection to like real house music as like a Mongoloid fan. I was so obsessed with those guys. Like, that was my focal thing, was like Armand, Sneak, Daft Punk, Basement Jaxx, Junior Sanchez, Roger Sanchez, Harry Romero, the Rhythm Masters, Laid Back Luke to a certain extent. Like, just the sound of 1997, like bass lines.
New York house. New York had a very distinct sound, and
well, like the combo, like it was when New York and Chicago and France were like converging, when like the filters met the bass lines.
Oh, yeah, this is a good era.
House drums, and met the, like, when everything came together, and like, and you know, that all happened. It happened to coincide with me, like, you know, taking ecstasy for the first time, and it just all worked out perfectly. I feel like that's how you figure out what kind of dance music you like. You know, you're like, you go somewhere and you're just like, what the fuck? I thought I didn't like this, and now this is the only thing I care about.
Everything sounds 3D. Yeah, it sounds 3-dimensional. That was my ecstasy.
Professional Widow. I heard Professional Widow Armand Van Helden remix.
Those head explosions.
While I was candy flipping, and I was just like, what is that bass line? What is that drum? And is that Tori Amos talking about sucking dick? Like, what? Like, how did this, like, how did, you know what I mean? Like, she's like a lesbian folk singer, and that was like, you can do anything with a remix. Like, if you can turn a Tori Amos record into a dance anthem about fellatio, then like, you're the best remixer.
Yeah, 100%.
But I digress. The point was, I hit up Junior Sanchez and was like, yo, your man Sneak wants to kill me. Can you please like text him and tell him that like not to kill me, and that I'm cool. And then like, when you tell me you've done that, I'm gonna reply to his message. And so he did, and he's like, yo, like, you're okay, like, hit him up. So I wrote him back on MySpace. It's like, it looks like I'm breaking up with him. It's like this small. You know? it's
Handle with care.
Dear Mr. Sosa, I hope this correspondence finds you well. And I'm just puckering up, And I'm just like, please don't hurt me. I just love you so much. I love your music. Maybe like, let me explain to you like what Blogspot is and like what's going on right now and like why this is not unlike
That's hilarious.
mixtapes from back in the day. And we just kind of kept in touch. And his wife, I want to say, was a fan of mine. And they got really into like an old mixtape I did, which was like a Lowrider Oldies mix. And then we stayed in touch, and like he still talks about that mix to this day, the way that I talk about like his mixes. So we have this weird kind of like like when it comes to house, like if I want to talk to him about house music, he's always just like, you listen to me and like you don't talk, you know what I mean? 'Cause it's like,
sit down, shut up.
But then when it comes time to talk about like other stuff, he gives me the same respect. So it's been this amazing relationship where I have managed to get through like 12 years of solid friendship and have not had like anything negative said about me on Twitter or anything. So I mean, I love him, and that's that trip to Toronto. I had never been so much on the inside of it. I worked in hip hop, I've worked with DJs and all that stuff, but I had never been to a legendary producer's house like that and stayed in his home for so long that like there were no like, it wasn't like you're going over for a dinner party and everyone's dressed their best and acting their best. You know what I mean? Like we were sitting around in pajamas, smoking blunts in the morning, going to Tim Hortons like 3 times a day, and I was just watching him like just bang out tracks, and I was seeing the way that he would set up the hi-hats and the snares and just shuffle them around and move them around, and he would break out old samples from old records and layer them. And I just like, I had never had no one had ever really, I had never asked, but I had also just never been brought inside a studio like that, particularly someone who is what I consider to be like one of the best to ever do it.
And exposure to Sneak and stuff. I mean, I would say I've had a similar experience, and it definitely influenced my workflow. But on the topic of hip hop, because I think a lot of producers in dance music especially have some sort of hip hop background or connection. So how has hip hop influenced the way you approach music production?
I mean, specifically to the Brillstein project, at the lack of like exposing kind of my whole thing is that almost every sample that I use for a Brillstein record comes from a hip hop record. Like my entire first EP and maybe the first 6 or 7 releases all had like I was sampling samples as they were already sampled. Like, I guess for lack of a better term, postmodernism. Where like I would take a loop from Black Moon that already had like the digital warmth on it, that already had like kind of the MPC filters and like all this stuff. Because again, I wasn't like a great producer, so I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time in the studio with Dave Taylor, also known as Switch, Solid Groove, like one of the best producers of all time. And I would be in his studio a lot, and his thing to me was he was always like, he's like, don't spend a lot of time like trying to make a kick sound good. Just take a kick that sounds really good and use that for your song. Like take, you know, like he's like, until like kind of like a fake it, not even fake it till you make it, but just like don't waste time compressing a kick when like the best producers in the world have already compressed a kick for you, you know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of like applied that to, I mean, we all steal people's drums, and like I think I applied that to sampling a little bit, where I'm like, cool, like Premier and the Beat Miners and Pete Rock and all these guys have already like gotten these loops to this tone, and my rule is if it's more than 20 years old, you can sample it, no matter what kind of music it is. So even if it's something that is sampled, if it's 2000 or 2020 now, so anything from before 2000 is fair game, in my opinion.
Brillstein's law.
You know, like that. I think time is irrelevant because like I've like, you know, for example, I sampled Tony Allen's Asico. Now, and I only did it because like I do with every sort of original hip hop sample, like I go right to the source. I don't go to the hip hop record.
Right.
I knew that would be a challenge, and boy, that sampling that was a fucking challenge because Dilla chopped it a certain way, and I learned it to get it to loop. But to me, it's more about translating the record to dance music.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
We'll also recontextualizing those loops and try to sell it to someone as a hip hop beat. But I was like, if I'm taking it and speeding it up, beating it up and making it up and making something an interesting like effect. Like I sampled a Black Moon record for my first EP, and then I played it at the Do-Over, and then Jazzy Jeff was like, "Yo, what is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, cool!" Like, you know, arguably the world's most famous DJ like likes this record, and it was because of that. I think hip hop is a great uniter in that sense, and that actually was how I got into Sneak. I think, like, you know, for lack of a better term, you know, in the early '90s, house music was considered gay. I mean, I know it was very much a part of hip hop in the late '80s, and you know, there was like the Jungle Brothers and Special Ed and Queen Latifah, and like every rap record had like a house record on it, and urban radio in LA, like Power 106, what is now just a station of like just Drake and Future. In the early '90s, it was like Richard Humpty Vision, and they were playing, you know, Show Me Love and Bizarre Inc., Nightcrawlers, Fresh Tunes, all kinds of, you know, Elias, all the like hits, Robert Owens, like all this stuff. They would play it late at night, and I would hear it, and I liked it. But as I got into high school and I got into like punk rock and hip hop and stuff, it was just like, nah, like, raving isn't cool. Like those guys are crazy. Like those, you know, like that's like, it's druggy and it's weird, and it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And when I went to my first rave and I started hearing stuff, and you don't know what's what, you just know that it's bass, and like you're kind of, I was drawn to whatever like
frequency was coming out,
acid and hardcore. Like it's kind of hard to figure out what's what. But when I was music shopping and at the listening stations, whenever I would pull DJ Sneak's record, because he was always like, he just looked fresh. You know what I mean? Like he always had like a fresh tee on, and he had his hair did, and he had his da-da-da, and he was always like he always like, he like looked like a hip hop record. You know what I mean? Like the DJ Sneak EP and like Blue Funk Files and like all that stuff. Like it just, they looked, you know, like when you're record shopping, when you're young, you're pulling stuff because like, oh, this looks cool. Let me see what it sounds like. I would hear Sneak's beats and his use of samples, and I would say, I was like, these are beats. Like this isn't house, this isn't tech. Like it transcended house and techno. I was like, these are beats. Like the drums are banging, the loops are there. Like this gives me that same kind of like, it felt like it was like boom. It sounded like boom bap dance music to me, but it was like, it just charged me up. And then as I got in more to like him and Armand and Kenny Dope and all these guys, and I really saw that like it's like you said, like a lot of us come from that background. And like, I didn't know at the time as a hip hop DJ that Armand was the man behind AV8 Records, or that Kenny Dope was also the same guy who was making all these like kind of like party breaks and all that kind of like, and you know, there was Masters at Work stuff that was like mid-tempo, like boom bap records and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, like you can be a guy who like does all this stuff. And then when I was coming up as a hip hop DJ in New York in the late '90s and early 2000s, I would bug because I'd be playing in the most thugged out clubs. Like I'm talking about places where I would have to wait in line with my crates to exit sometimes so that I could make a police statement. Where they were just like, did you see the stabbing? Like, what happened? Like, all this stuff. And I would see Todd at those clubs. I would see Armand. And, like, that was how I met Junior, was actually through Stretch Armstrong. Because they were all, like, in New York, they were, like, they just kind of, like, they all knew each other. And they were all from an era where house, where, like, New York house was, like, an urban music. And it was an underground black scene. And it was, like, and it was cool because I would be playing in the side rooms and I would play like an hour of R&B and some reggae and some stuff, but there would always be that set that I would get to play around like 2:30 a.m. where I would play like Break for Love and The Percolator and like all that stuff. And the same people who were like, you know, ripping off their shirts to MOP Annie Up are like, you know, doing like getting real funky and dancing to Follow Me. And I was like, oh man, like all this stuff can live together. And like, I met Juju from the Beatnuts actually through a conversation about Kings of Tomorrow when Finally came out. And I was playing it in a club, and he came up and he's like, what is this? Like, I don't know this. I was like, it's a brand new record. He's like, man, this sounds like some real old, like real New York house shit. And I was like, aren't you Juju from the Beatnuts? Like, shouldn't you be like doing something crazy right now? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was like, watch it out now and everything's out. And I was just like, that's crazy. And we sat after the club and just like had a couple drinks and talked about house music. And I think that people have pigeonholed it for years. Now, not so much anymore. Like, I think the definition of what house music is has become very vague, and it's such a saturated market. But particularly at the time, it was like either you knew about it or you didn't. And I was shocked, particularly in New York, on how many guys that I had grew up watching their videos on MTV where they're just like with 40s and guns and like da-da-da, that were like house heads and could do the little spin around dance and do, you know, like, you know, and they were going to see, you know what I'm talking about, right? The spin around,
you, man.
Yeah. the New York house, like where you're just like, you do a little spin. And and they would go, like, because all these dudes would stay up all weekend and wild out, and they would go to like vinyl on Sundays, and they would go see Francois K and Danny Krivit and stuff. And there was like
just the names,
there was an
man.
appreciation of the soul and the funk of it, where it was just like, you've been up for 2 days, like you got to like up the tempo, you know?
yeah.
You keep the heart pumping.
Yeah. And so I think that was important, and just realizing, because for the years before, it was a thing where it was like a dirty secret almost. Like, I worked all day in hip hop studios, and, you know, like stashing guys' guns at my house and like doing all this stuff. And on my lunch break, I would go to Satellite Records or Wax. I smoke a lot of weed. The names of this game. I would go to record stores and I'd be buying like house records, but I'd have them like real stashed in the office. You know what I mean? Like, you'd be like, what'd you do on your lunch break? You'd be like, I don't know, some thug shit. But it was really like, I had a bag full of like Roulette records and like Daft Punk records.
Straight from France.
Yeah.
With your baguette on the side.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it was this funny little thing. And I mean, even towards the mid to late 2000s, when I started doing dance music, a lot of like streetwear guys and hip hop guys I worked with were like, oh, word? Like, this is what, like, you're fucking with this shit? Like, this is some weirdo shit. Like, it was, I think it wasn't really until the late 2000s, in the last 10 years, that it's really been like
commercialized.
Like good, I feel like there's more of an appreciation of good music. Like when
yeah, I think so. I mean,
started working with dance music people and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you know, you've named so many different styles and eras, and obviously sampling's a huge piece of that. And what I'm hearing is you appreciate all the genres and where they came from. But you did mention a few things around like high school and you know, coming up as a hip hop DJ. Then, if you know, do you talk to anyone from that era, and would they be like, you know, what Mike B is or Brillstein, is that pretty accurate to kind of where your inspo came from back then? Yeah,
I would say so. And I still talk to those guys all the time. Again, I was going to college when I met Stretch Armstrong, and he hired me to be his intern. And I spent the summer interning for him, and I was like, yo, man, give me a chance and a paycheck, and like, I'll never go back to school. You know what I mean? And he brought me in, and so that was kind of like how I got brought into hip hop. But then now, cut to 21 years later, I went to his 50th birthday last year, and the DJ booth at that party was Stretch, Bobbito, Clark Kent, Tony Touch, D Nice, Little Louis Vega, Kenny Dope, and like they were all together and they were all playing together, and like Louis got on and played a classic house set, banged it out. Clark Kent got on and played, you know, Pharoah Monch and MOP and all this stuff, like banged it out. Bobbito played Jill Scott, and like everyone, we were all grown up now, so like everyone was in the same place, like, and it was clear that like everyone loved that music. Like, you know, people like Pharoah was on the dance floor, like doing the spin dance when when Louis Vega was playing, and it was just the thing where it's like, I'm glad that we all grew up to like bring it all together. Because when I used to see Armand in those hip hop clubs, he would not want to talk about it. Like, I would see him from across the club and get on the mic and be like, Armand Van Helden in the house, and he'd look over and I'd hold up like an armed record and he'd be like, yo, chill, you know, like it was the thing, like he was in there undercover, you know what I mean? Like he was out there trying to smash or like do whatever. And like and like it was a thing where like kind of like you didn't want to like, you wanted the people in the hip hop spot to just think you were a baller. Like you didn't want them to think you were like a house producer or something. Yeah. And I guess, I don't know. That was the story I made up when I was 19. I don't want to put words in that man's mouth. I don't really know that. But
yeah,
that
little
was the
caveat
vibe
there.
Because I would just be like, yo, Armand, like I love your shit. And he would be like, what shit? I don't know what you're talking about. Like keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
Oh God, how good.
I believe that.
Now I think it's a lot more open, and it's a lot more like, you don't have to be like, yo, like I like this, I like that. Like I think there's a little bit more of a like, especially with I think the internet is mostly, you know, we're all products of our environment, and when you're raised by people who tell you like this is what's up and this is what's cool and like this shit is whack or like this shit is not for you, then you know sometimes you got to have a whole lifelong journey before you can even come to that music and stuff. Whereas now, like any kid in any place with a good Wi-Fi connection and like a mind to find it can learn the history of house music in like an hour. Like people can learn what took me like 15 years in like 10 minutes, which I think is awesome. And I think it's great. I mean, which is why we have so many young, talented producers, because you don't have to take that, like, you don't have to save up the money to get vinyl. You don't have to. And I'm never like that old guy that's like, well, you don't know how it was for us. And I had to carry records and I spent, you know, $15 to get one song. And yeah, you know, you ain't shit if you can't play records. I'm like, nah, man. Like I used to sit outside of record stores and wait for them to open, just like, cause I had to get in there and get a copy. And now it's like record stores are 24 hours. I mean, even like during quarantine and all this stuff, like, at least we can still go record shopping all the time. You know what I mean?
You
like,
don't.
You can still go digging. You can still buy music. We can still DJ for each other. We don't have to like get in the club. That was the other thing. You couldn't get in the club. Like, you know, like someone dope was playing at a spot that had 100 people. You didn't show up early. You couldn't get in. Like right now, like if you miss it, you can watch it on YouTube the next day. You could watch Boiler Room. Like you could be on a farm in, you know, in Kansas and have the same opportunity of knowing what of getting a house music education as someone who lives in the inner city, which I think is fantastic.
It is a dope time to be living in and to educate. You know, there's just so many resources available. You mentioned the whole vinyl thing, and this argument comes up from time to time. Where's your thoughts on the debate of vinyl versus CDJs? Like, where do you sit on this? Are you more of a DJ if you play on vinyl versus CDJs, or what do you think?
I think that people have turned vinyl into a genre, which I don't like. Like I see a lot of flyers, and I own a club, so like there are a lot of parties there where people, you know, it's like all girls, all vinyl, and just anything that's all anything. I'm always like, yeah, but are they all dope? And like, and what are you playing?
All
like,
DJs
you know
only.
what I mean? Like it's just like, I'm never like, yo, who made it? Did a girl make this food or like a dude make this food? Like I only want to eat like a lady. You know, it's just like, is this dope? I think is the deal. And I think if you're young, if you're 19 and you can't play records, good. Like you didn't waste your life. You know what I mean? Like you grew up with CDJs. Like I consider myself lucky to have done it. I feel like my ears work better for it. Like I think my hearing is quick, and I love the fact that I can bring my entire record collection to the club on one USB stick, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah.
I don't really use record box because I try not to. I don't really want to be owned by any like app. I like to put the songs in folders. I kind of make my folders the same way I make my crates. I don't really use like loops or anything like that. It's like, you got to find the spot. If I want to start the record from the middle, I got to find it. I like that rush of like, can I make it? Can I get it? Can I get to the spot? Like, it reminds me of vinyl, you know, and like, just like I used to be, there was any number of records where I could literally on one needle drop be like within 1 second of where I needed it to be.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, and I try not to lose that skill. So in the event that someone says, hey, we have turntables and no CDJs, can you use Serato? I'm like, no, I can't. But what I can do is I still record shop. I can play an hour of records from this year the same way I could on my CDJ, because that's just I never want to let that go, because I've worked so long on it. I mean, I don't want to be a guy that's like a blacksmith or like, you know, like I don't want to be like the Amish music guy where I'm just like, oh, this is the way to do it. But I truly enjoy it. I have a love for records. Like, I have an appreciation for them. I'm trying to get the ones that I don't need out of my house as fast as possible. But the ones that I love, like, I look at them and there's like, even the ones that are worth like, you know, $100 or whatever, I just look at them and I'm like, nah, like, this is not going anywhere. I need, like, this is just, I get so much happiness out of them. And so I think, I don't know whether or not I answered the question. So if it's like, what do I think about vinyl versus CDJs? I think if you are on the dance floor and you're not watching me DJ, I like to think that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference what I was using.
Good answer.
Yeah.
I like that.
Which I like, because I remember Oliver Dollar and I were playing out here last year, and Seven Davis Jr. came with us, and he was watching us play vinyl, and he was, hold on, I'm just going to pick up all these names I'm dropping up on the floor. You know, Marlon Brando told me never drop names. But we were DJing, and Seven came up and he was like, yo, it's crazy, man. When you guys play, it sounds just like CDJs. And we're like, well, no, it's that when we play CDJs, it sounds like it's just the DJing sounds like DJing when we DJ.
Yeah.
Because Ollie is like a great, you know, well-versed in vinyl. And I try not to do that. I try not to get to, I think it's really cool that kids have all these tricks at their disposal and that people can sync stuff and loop stuff and trigger things on the fly and pull up sound effects and stuff. And I know how to do all that stuff. I just don't use it, because I think that is what defines my style, is that my sets have sounded consistent kind of since I developed it. So I just try to make it so that whether if I'm using Serato, if I'm using CDJs, if I'm using vinyl, if I'm on someone's computer, or even when if I do a mix in Ableton or something like that, it will never consist of like things that I can't do in real life, essentially. Like, there's never like some sort of mad trickery, you know, like I really just try to like apply the skill of using your ears to hear what sounds right and doing things at the correct time.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
And rocking the party and playing the music you love.
Rocking the party, man, first and foremost.
I will tell you guys, I got a break in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, cool. Well, look, we'll look to wrap it up, because you've answered a lot of our questions, which has been really cool.
You've asked two questions, and I've talked for an hour.
No, but it's been sick, man.
But we worked them in.
I had one cup of coffee, and this is what happens. I also haven't smoked weed yet. I'm actually gonna do that. This is how I'm gonna light up a blunt for this last end, and I'm gonna smoke a blunt with you, Demuir.
Oh god. Well, I think the only well, there's a couple, right, Oscar? There's the one like, there's a lot of people streaming right now, and if you had the opportunity to set up a bill of DJs, what 4 DJs would you have on your streaming roster?
Oh wow, I get 4. I get 4
4
DJs.
4 names.
4 DJs to stream, and now we're talking about living, but I get all over the world.
Yeah.
Dream stream or house stream?
Dream stream, man. This is all you
right
and all your things.
Right off the bat, Fatboy Slim, Basement Jaxx, Daft Punk, DJ Sneak.
So,
all right.
cool.
That's an OG list if you've ever heard one.
That's OG.
If you're giving me fifths and alternates, I'm saying Mark Farina and Doc Martin. Doc, I would say across the board, Doc on any given day might be my answer for my favorite DJ of all time. Doc is like, he's the best thing that LA ever gave to house music. You know, he's made so many strides for us. That was the first mix CD I ever bought from a store. Like, you know, when you're like, damn, they make mixtapes on CDs. Like, I don't know how old you guys are, but like, I remember that feeling. I don't have to have this on cassette, and I can buy this like in shrink wrapped and everything. It's not like a recording. And Doc and Farina were like some of like the first guys that had CDs that I could buy at Tower Records.
Yeah, right.
And, like, specifically Unlock Your Mind. If you haven't heard Doc Martin, Unlock Your Mind, that it's like the first time that Daft Punk was ever like licensed for a US label. It was the first place I heard DJ Sneak. Actually, it was I mean, it's just like, it's a perfect mix, and he weaves in and out from everything that was going on that year, from like West Coast acid breaks to techno to New York house to French touch. He's got like iCube on there. If you guys haven't heard it, and you guys on the internet, if you haven't heard it, Doc Martin, Unlock Your Mind, 1996 Moonshine record. Arguably the best mixtape. It's so ill. Like, there's tracks 40 minutes in that he's still teasing, that he's teasing in the first minute. That was kind of the first time I heard people really doing that, where like bring in the loop, like let it go, like, and then you would see it in the, like, oh man, Doc Martin, fucking Doc Martin, everybody. Doc Martin.
All right, I love it.
If I had a dream lineup of 4 hours, just Doc Martin. 4 DJs broken down to an hour. Because you can't give Doc an hour. That's disrespect. Like, you gotta,
Disrespect.
You're not wrong,
yeah,
man.
you know what I mean? Like, you gotta give Doc like 4 hours. Like, he will tell you a story.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, conscious that you've got some things to do. I've got 2 more quick ones.
Yes.
You got a lot of experience in the game across a lot of genres. Any tips that you can share with any young dudes trying to make their mark or not come off shit, or you know what I mean? Don't be a douche.
Only tip I can. I've told it. I mean, I've had this question asked before, obviously, and I'd say the same thing to people anytime they ask for DJ lessons or what would you say to someone young. I'm like, find a promoter who likes you enough to let you keep playing even after you totally blew it. You know what I mean? I think like that's really the most important thing. Like, if it wasn't for people that just genuinely saw something in me or like liked me enough to let me keep coming back, because I feel like there's no way to learn. Like, you can't learn what to do until you fuck up. Like, when you're playing and you just play the wrong song, or you unplug the turntable, or the record skips, or you know, just like whatever you do made it so that people had a bad night. Like that feeling of going home and being like, they might never let me play again. Like, that was what drove me to get better.
Okay.
And going to a place that was full of people every week. I got to have a residency basically in New York on Saturdays that lasted about 3 years, where when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. And by the time I was done, I really just had my whole style, my whole set dialed in, because I got to play for the same people every week. And it got better and better and better. And also I think the only way to do that at home is, another piece of advice I would give is to listen to your favorite DJ's mix, get 4 of the songs in a row that you hear them do, try to do it exactly the same way, never in front of people, only at your own home. Do not bite people's mixes. Like, kids don't know about this, but like, don't bite people's mixes. You hear someone do something hot, that's hot, right? Like, you hear Mick Jagger take like a sick guitar solo, you don't go around just doing it and saying like, hey, look at my guitar solo. Like, you see someone do a hot mix, like, that's their hot mix, and you got to appreciate it. You could do it like on the low, when there's a small crowd and there's not that many people watching and no one's videoing, but like, and if you earned it and they're your friend. And I think you try to copy what someone you love does, and then take that and apply it to 4 different songs. Like just try to like, because I think it takes a long time before people know where the 1 is, and a long time before people know what to do with records that don't have exactly 16 or 32 up front.
Yeah.
I think like, you know, or especially like if you want to become a great house DJ, try playing disco records from the 70s for 2 hours and like not fucking up a minute. You know what I mean?
No BPMs.
Well, yeah, because like not everything needs to be blended.
Yeah.
Not everything needs to be blended for 3 minutes at a time. You got to know when some songs need to get just dropped cold on the 1, but you also got to know what song to come out of. If you're coming out of a tracky record, you can't just drop something on the 1 and change the whole vibe. Like if you got something real big and instrumental that's got like a big breakdown, you can echo it out and start something that has an intro or maybe doesn't have drums up front. Basically, like, don't get caught up in like making edits of everything and having, because I feel like that's just too easy. Like anyone can put 16 bars of open drums at the beginning of a record. You know what I mean? Like DJing is about like going up and down and like telling a story. And I mean, even in house, you can do it. Go from 116 to 130 in the same set, see what happens. Alternately, don't even look at BPMs. You know, when I was playing vinyl, I never had the BPM stickers on my record because that's how you figure stuff out. Like sometimes something could be mid-tempo and the other thing would be up-tempo, but there was a clever enough lyrical thing where someone was like, you know, drop it, and then the first song starts with the word drop it, and you can go to that. Like there are ways. You'll never figure out how to be, I think, an ill DJ unless you stop thinking about BPMs. Like when I'm getting on after someone else and they're like, hey man, where do you want me to leave you off at? I'm like, I want you to leave me off when it's fucking time for me to play. You know what I mean? And wherever you're at, if it's whack, I'm just going to stop it and start my shit. Or if it's cool and if it's cool and I feel what you're doing, I'm going to play out of what you're doing. And that's been,
we'll find out real quick.
You know what I mean? Like,
okay, sick,
but I will never,
now we
I
know.
never cut off anyone's song or anything like that, but definitely like, it's never like, hey, what BPM do you want me to leave you off at? I'm like, I don't know, the BPM of music, bro. Like, I'll figure it out.
Okay, sick. Look, my last one. What's coming up for Brillstein? Where can we find you? Doing live streams, releases, all the bits and pieces.
Refuge.
What's in the building?
No, I'm really stoked, man. I mean, I've been working on some other projects. I just finished up an album for my project Pools that should be coming out on Razor and Tape this summer. A full-length album. So that's been taking up most of the last year and a half. And we just finally put the finishing touches on it last night, which was why, Oscar, it took me so long to get you those demos. Because, yeah, Brillstein it's an act of necessity. Like, it's not my... If it were to become my main lot in life, I would love nothing more than to play excellent house music. But it's like when I have an idea, I do it. And when I feel like it's Brillstein time, like I just rock it. And yeah, I mean, the releases we have, what do we have? 2 releases coming out? 3?
Yep.
2 releases.
2.
3 original tracks, a couple remixes and a re-edit on Refuge Australia. And a fantastic label. I don't know if you've heard of it. And then other than that, I don't have a lot in the works. I mean, there's a ton of stuff I'm doing with Ollie Dollar. We have the remix album coming out for his album soon, which is really exciting. We have a Todd Edwards remix of our track that I'm really excited to share with the world. That was definitely like, I definitely got to wake up and hear Todd Edwards' remix of my track, which was, I think, like a lifelong goal. I'm excited about that. Always working on stuff with Ollie. We definitely have, when I say I have no demos, I mean, I don't have a lot of my solo stuff, but Ollie and I have like 15 records or something.
Yeah, send those too, man. All good.
Is that, you know, everything we do is 50-50 down the line. And he's one of those OG guys that, like, most house guys I meet, and I feel like Demuir is probably the same way. I feel like you're sitting on 200 songs I've never heard that are fire, right? I see, you can tell from the smile.
Yeah, look at his face, bro. You know.
When we first met, I was like, yo, you got anything you could send me? You sent me like 18 things, and it was literally songs you can't have or something like that. And it was like,
oh yeah, the album you can't have, yeah,
the album you can't have, and it was just fire. There's a dub version and a night version and a heart, like that's like more than I've made in my career. But I do try to I try to keep it moving, and I try to have I try not to look at it as like a time crunch. Like look at Sade, right? She only put out an album like every 8 years. We still love Sade, right? So I'll put out like 1-2 songs a year and I'm good.
On that note,
balls.
All right, guys. I appreciate you jumping on the call.
Hey,
Brillstein,
I love you guys, man. Good to see you
Demuir,
guys.
thank you.
I'm glad we could do this. I'm gonna take a screenshot for the gram. And I'll see you. I'll see
Take
you
care,
guys soon, man.
Peace.
Good to see you guys. Peace.